Would you be surprised to hear that the inventory of homes available for purchase continues to rise while buyer demand seems to be flagging a little bit? Well, that's what we're working with right now. I'm Ron Milligan with RE/MAX Select here in Portland's Pearl District, and I have the latest real estate statistics for you. These are our weekly market statistics based on a sampling that we draw from RMLS week after week. So let's start with the big one, which is inventory continuously on the rise here. You can see in this graph here that inventory is just doing a steady climb up. We're at 4243, which is up 9% versus the 3884 that we had last week. And then when I look at last year, where we were last year, we're up 43% versus the 2967 that I saw in my notes from last year, roughly the same time period. So again, I keep repeating this, last year was a bonkers year, not the best year as an example of what a normal year is in real estate. Probably one of the hottest years that we've had. In the context of previous years, you know, that were still seller's advantage markets like 15, 16, 17, 18, we're still doing better. We still have lower inventory, number of homes to purchase. We also have lower inventory in months, that measure of buyer demand plus supply. So not as bad as it could feel looking at that 43% increase in the supply. But we don't know where this is going to land. We don't know where this number is going to settle off, and we just keep seeing this number rise and rise and rise. I have a feeling it's going to start to plateau a little bit as we enter summer, but we'll see in the next few weeks. The next thing up is the number of new pending transactions. So that was down from last week. Last week we had a pretty good showing with 929, the week before that is, and last week we ended up with 729. So buyer demand seems to be down a little bit. The other thing that I did check was the number of new pending deals last year at this time. That number was 1,068. And I feel like last year, I'll have to double check my numbers. I'll definitely do that for next week, but I feel like at this point last year, the buyer demand started to wane as well as we entered into summer. And I suspect that this summer is going to be pretty quiet for buyers and sellers. Folks, especially with this year that we've had with the rain and rain and rain and rain, and all of a sudden we have a bit of sun and we're going to have July and August. I really do think that folks are going to kind of take off, buyers are going to take off, and sellers might be left a little bit nervous based on the number of showings and offers that they're getting on their homes. So there may be some advantages for buyers, some possibilities for buyers during the summer. Then of course in September we usually have a nice little tick of business. As soon as kids go back to school, business picks up a little bit, which is kind of nice, and then we close those deals in October. So the other thing that I did check out was Lockbox opens, just to see how much activity there was. And so Lockbox opens, you know, that's kind of another measure of, you know, how many showings we're having. Keep in mind that lockboxes get open for all sorts of different reasons, including home inspections and agents just putting the lockboxes, the keys in their lockbox when they put it on their new listing, that sort of thing. But it is kind of, you know, the lion's share of the opens are about buyers, agents showing the home to their buyers. So in 2021, we had roughly the same time period, the same week, 22,032 lockbox opens. And in 2022, this last week, we ended up with 18,581. This is just for the Portland Metro, Portland side, doesn't include any Washington lockbox opens. And that is 15.7, approximately 15.7 decrease in the number of lockbox opens last year compared to this year. The next thing up are price reductions, that number that I've started tracking the last few weeks. I did see that we had 662 price reductions last week, and of those, 618, when I checked those numbers on Tuesday, were still active, and only 44 of those had actually gone under contract. The other thing that I did, though, is I wanted to see if there were any differences in the amount that people dropped their prices. And I saw that for price reductions of $10,000 or more, there were only 566 versus the 662. So the balance in there, the difference between those two numbers, are people who are doing like what we call like a cheap price reduction. It's a real small price reduction really meant to just get the listing to pop again in all of the search engines, get more eyeballs on the listing, and then maybe generate some more showings for the property. The second one up was $25,000. There were only 269 price reductions in that price point that did price reductions of $25,000 or more. And then when it got into $50,000, there's only 107. And I looked through the list of those, and the properties that did $50,000 price reductions, they were all, a couple in the 7s and 8s, but most everything else was 900,000 and above $1 million. Bumpable buyers, something that we've been tracking. So bumpable buyers, that's contingent offers. And that, I think, is kind of important because that is an indicator that we're moving back into more of a healthy market, where when you want to move up to another home or you want to move down to another home, you can write an offer contingent upon the sale of your current home, and the sellers are open, the sellers of the property you want to buy are open to accepting your offer, subject to you finding a buyer for your home. And that makes that move up, move down process so much easier. Or if you're moving to a different city or something like that, and you need to write an offer on this other property contingent upon the property in Portland, and say you're buying in wherever it happens to be that you're buying, Spokane. So that is up again. So last week we were at 67. This week we clocked in at 74. And of those 74, 29 were new transactions. So we're starting to see more bumpable offers. And that should help, those clients, those buyers, or those sellers, buyers/sellers who wanted to move into a different property, but they were just worried because they knew they'd list their current home, it would sell in a snap, and they wouldn't be able to compete with a contingent offer to purchase their next home. Moving back more towards a healthy market, making that available, keeping that option open for them. So the homes that did sell, 766, not too bad when we compare it to previous weeks. Compared to last year, that number, when I checked the notes, my notes from last year, that number was 802, so not terrible. Pretty decent number for this year. But keep in mind that this is for transactions that went under contract 3 to 6 weeks ago. So not indicative of what's going on right now, but more indicative of what was going on 3 to 6 weeks ago when they went under contract. Of those homes, they spent a median of 5 days on the market, same number last year at this time. Average days on market, 14. That was up from 12 the previous week. Compared to 16 last year. So still selling relatively quickly, but what may be happening are the homes that are overpriced and are spending more time on the market, they're having a longer journey dropping down to market value, and we're not seeing their days on market in our numbers yet. So that may still be coming. We'll expect to see that days on market start to rise as some of those homes hit market value, go under contract, and then sell with the bigger days on market, pulling that average up. Average sale price, $632,832 versus last year, roughly the same time period, $589,780. That is a 7.3% increase. The median came in at $559,900 versus last year, $520,401. That was a 7.6% increase. Very modest numbers compared to what we've been seeing in recent weeks. So I think we might be on that slide down now, which is going to drag kind of the higher numbers we saw in the previous months, in the first 5 or so months of this year, as we compare 21 to 22. So by the end of the year, we'll expect to see, the numbers 14, 13, 12% that we were seeing at the start of the year. We're going to start to see those numbers diminish as we head through summer and into fall and winter. Average sale price versus the asking price, 103.04. Last year that was 104.48. And then the median was 102.47 versus last year 106.13. So last year is definitely outperforming. We're starting to see the change in our market this year versus last year. I think that's maybe the third week that we've seen numbers like that, and that's pretty consistent. So those are the numbers that I have for you today. I suspect when I look at the numbers next week, they're going to be kind of modest. because we did have a holiday on Monday, which is going to have like a suppressed number of closings, because we're only going to have 4 days this week for properties to sell. And I suspect that a lot of people, just based on the traffic this week, are out of town this week. So I'll bring those numbers to you next week. As always, all real estate is local. If you're curious about what's going on in your specific area, in fact, we just did the Lake Oswego numbers for a client of mine, and that was kind of shocking to see what those numbers are looking like. But if you're interested in what's going on in your neighborhood, just hit me up and I'm happy to run those numbers for you. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. I'd love that. And if you have any thoughts or experiences or frustrations, feel free to share them in the comments. I read all the comments and I'm happy to interact and share any advice that I can with you. Okay, we'll see you next week.